Good afternoon and welcome to Movie Talk. I'm Michael DeGregorio from the CharlotteGeeks.com.
And I'm David Mackey from the TreePodcast.com.
Good to be with you. This is our debut episode of our podcast, audio-video podcast. I don't know if you're watching this or listening to it, but either way, we're happy to have you on board. We are going to talk to you about movies that are in the theaters now and movies that are coming up in the next couple of weeks. And we're going to start it off by talking about X-Men, Days of Future Past.
It's going to take all of us to end this war.
You're a beast?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Pretty strong for a scrawny kid. I said you need to leave.
You and I are going to be good friends. You just don't know it yet.
Mr. Mackey, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts on X-Men Days of Future Past. First Class was one of my favorite X-Men films. Definitely a big step forward from X3, which
Absolutely agreed.
As every X-Men fan,
Universally despised film.
right. So First Class, I saw it, absolutely loved it. Loved every minute of it. Couldn't get enough of it. Then had to wait 2.5 years for Days of Future Past.
To be honest with you, I never read the comic books. I talk about that on the Charlotte Geeks website. I'm a comic book movie fan, but basically all my knowledge comes from the films. So I loved X-Men. It was the first time a film like that had been done in a project that they said was basically unfilmable.
Right.
For years they said X-Men couldn't be made into a movie. I guess with the limitations on effects and such like that.
That makes sense.
So X-Men was really good. X-Men 2 I thought was amazing.
Yeah.
It's weird because now online in the geek community there's kind of a weird retconning. I like that term.
Yeah.
Retconning of the fact that they don't like X2. Like, there's a lot of people saying that wasn't that great of a movie, but I remember at the time, it was like the best thing that ever came out. And I still like that movie. And then well-known director Bryan Singer left the X-Men franchise to make Superman, which was a lifelong fantasy of his, apparently. And he made the only Superman movie that literally put people to sleep.
Right. Superman Returns.
Superman Returns. And X3 was already kind of in pre-production at the time, so Brett Ratner stepped in, and I'm not a great fan of Brett Ratner. Most people are not.
Yeah,
but,
I'm not.
Right, but and that is all fair. However, I think Brett was he got a little bit more responsibility laid on him for X3 than he may have deserved.
Absolutely.
The script was already in motion.
Yeah.
It was locked. The cast was locked. I mean, as far as from what I understand, even the timing, the locations, and everything was set. So he basically came in like 30 days before they rolled film and did the best he could. Granted, it was, I think, universally agreed upon a disaster.
Yeah. We both agree.
We both agree. We have a unanimous consent. Unanimous consent. So X3 was not that great. X-Men Origins
Wolverine.
The first Wolverine
Fantastic.
movie. No, the Wolverine was good. The first one though, X-Men Origins.
I liked it.
Did you really? Okay.
Yeah, I did.
Well, it's funny. I liked it too. I thought my only complaint with it was it felt like an epic 3-hour movie that was chopped down to 90 minutes.
That's completely true.
It went way too fast. I wish they would have spent more time with the whole, like with Deadpool, for instance. A character that was so built up in the lead up to the movie.
Right.
He just disappeared.
And then he was in it for all of 3.5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then he became Weapon X.
Right. And then you take away Ryan Reynolds' greatest asset, which is his mouth. But so that was, let's say it's a semi-success.
Right.
Then we get to the Wolverine last year, which I thought was amazing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that was a great film. Apparently, like I said, I don't read comic books, but I peripherally know enough about them that I knew that the Silver Samurai storyline,
huge,
was going to be
Marvel lore.
Exactly, was going to be a big deal. And from what I understand, they did a fairly good job
Yeah.
of transferring?
Oh, absolutely. The Wolverine was a really good on-screen appearance from all those characters.
Okay.
It was a very good translation from the comic books when Wolverine spent time in Japan.
Right.
Kind of like it wasn't as good as Watchmen because I feel like Watchmen was just like page for page
Right,
out
yeah,
of the
yeah.
comic book.
Yeah.
But they did a fairly decent job of translating it.
Okay, good. I know I loved it. I mean, I was, because being burned with X3 and being so on the first Wolverine movie, I was a little, I'll see it. But then when it came out, the reaction from the people coming out of the theater was just, they loved it.
Oh, yeah.
And when I sat down and watched it, I was completely on board. I
Yeah.
loved it from start to finish. So knowing then that they were going to do Days of Future Past, the storyline, that film as the next film. And Bryan Singer, who, started the franchise and was directed the first two movies, obviously.
Right.
And I think he was an executive producer on First Class, because he was originally going to direct First Class.
Right.
But he was contractually obligated to do Jack the Giant Slayer.
Okay.
Like they couldn't get out of that, so he had to do that movie. And Matthew Vaughn, which was an inspired choice, he's a brilliant director,
Absolutely.
came in and did First Class, which was just amazing. I mean,
Phenomenal.
universally, I think people agree that was a great film.
Mm-hmm.
It was well structured, well paced. The characterizations were great. They embraced the inherent geekiness a little bit of the
definitely.
time frame. The 60s were great. It was like Mad Men with superheroes.
It was.
And
Definitely.
it was wonderful. Michael Fassbender is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
James McAvoy was amazing.
Oh.
Jennifer Lawrence, who wasn't really Jennifer Lawrence yet.
Right,
She was just kind of on the rise.
It was Jennifer Lawrence beta stage.
Exactly. Jennifer Lawrence beta stage. She was great in it. The casting was phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
So, as always happens online, the internet, the geek sites are very fickle and very hard to please.
Right.
So when Matthew Vaughn literally hit it out of the park with First Class, and he made Kick-Ass, which was a great movie, but he didn't do the sequel.
He didn't do the sequel, right?
Which suffered because of that. It was still an okay film, but it was not. It didn't have the
It wasn't
punch.
the original.
Right. So when Matthew Vaughn opted not to direct Days of Future Past, everyone was like, "Oh Lord, it's going to suck."
Yeah.
Because maybe there was a little bit of fear about Bryan Singer coming back because of Superman Returns being
Right.
kind of a pedestrian kind of film, kind of boring. Superman stood around and cried a lot, and
Right.
stalked longingly at Lois and the kid through the window, which was weird.
It was all around a weird Superman.
It really was.
It was a weird look at Superman.
I think they tried to pay too much homage to Christopher Reeve.
Definitely.
Who was a great Superman, will always be Superman for
Right.
most people, including me. You grew up with him. But anyway, we're not talking about Superman.
Right.
So when he did Jack the Giant Slayer, which was, it wasn't, it might have been fine for kids. It wasn't my cup of tea.
It was okay.
So it was fine. It wasn't offensive in any way. So then when he was coming back to do Days of Future Past, there was a little bit of concern that maybe he lost his touch on these kinds of films.
Yeah.
And of course, all through production, there was that same worry when some of the set photos came out. You started seeing pictures of the one everybody thinks about is Quicksilver.
Right.
And the original promo stills for Quicksilver it was met with universal disgust.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't know what he's supposed to look like, but everybody yelled that he didn't look like he was supposed to look with the silver hair. I mean,
Yeah. That was more of a just a movie thing.
okay,
Kind of like Wolverine in his costume. We've
Okay.
never seen Wolverine in the mask.
Right.
We've never seen him we've seen him in a faded blue and yellow stripes going down like the X-Men costumes used to be in the comics. But Quicksilver more or less didn't look like himself as he does in the comics. I do feel like the Quicksilver parts in the movie were phenomenal. They were
Absolutely.
the best parts of the movie for me.
Absolutely.
And the little tie-in where he talks about Magneto is great too.
Yeah.
I found that
My
was
mom
awesome.
used to know somebody like that.
Exactly,
It was
exactly.
a great line. I even laughed at that, and I knew just a little bit about that he's supposed to be Magneto's son.
Right.
And of course, at the end of Captain America: The Winter Soldier, which was a phenomenal film, there is the first credit stinger for the they always put little hidden.
Right.
The first one was the Hydra base, and
Right.
you've seen Quicksilver and
Scarlet Witch
in their cages,
Mm-hmm.
and Quicksilver in there. You didn't say anything; you just saw him kind of bouncing around,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we talked about it.
Yeah.
That he looked like he was like, I don't know, like
He was having
freaking
trouble
out.
with it. Yeah,
Right,
he couldn't quite control it, and it's kind of interesting that they're being played by different actors.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that it's Aaron Taylor Johnson in Avengers 2,
Yeah.
and Elizabeth Olsen in
Also in Avengers 2, yeah.
right, and they were both in Godzilla.
And they were both in Godzilla, which is the next film we talk about.
Right.
So, but going into X-Men: Days of Future Past, I'll honestly admit I was a little concerned. Not with Bryan Singer, I had complete faith in him, however blindly that may be. But I was worried that it had too much to do. Like it had too many boxes that needed to be checked off.
Yeah.
Like it had to hopefully fix X-Men 3. It had to explain the story of the Sentinels. It had to explain the mechanics of the world that it's putting you into.
Right.
And the whole time travel thing. And I was thinking, I even had this conversation with somebody at work that I said, I was afraid that it was going to be 2 hours of exposition.
Right.
Really heavy exposition.
I felt like that is completely true.
Right.
It's just I felt like it was going to be a ton of explanation as to how this is going to work out.
A lot of people standing around explaining the world.
Right.
But thankfully, I can report that it is not the case. That
Right.
movie flies. It is just... There's something about it when you're in the first few minutes of a movie,
Yeah.
and you know it's working.
Mhm.
When it's all clicking right and everything's
Right.
it just works. The first 10 minutes of The Dark Knight was this way. It just
Absolutely.
moves, and it's like,
Mhm.
oh yeah.
It gets you right into the seat of the action. It gets you right into the plot rather than taking forever to explain it and get you back into the world after taking a 2.5 year break from
Right, yeah.
the First Class world. It throws you right in. And
Right in.
It does a fantastic job of that.
Fantastic job. It moves like a freight train.
Yes.
It does not slow down. There's no dead spots in this film.
Mm-mm.
And like we talked about a minute ago, when Quicksilver, he's only in the movie briefly.
Yeah.
Basically one sequence, but it is phenomenal. The theater I saw it in literally cheered during the one sequence in the Pentagon breakout.
Absolutely.
It was crazy.
It's great.
He nailed it perfectly. It's for me, like I said, I don't know the version of him in the comic books. I just know the screen version, but I was like, this is great. And now it's like the onus now has switched now back to being on Aaron Taylor Johnson for Avengers next year. Like, oh, now you've got to compete with this.
Right.
But it was great. The best thing I can say about it, and this was another concern with people, that they were going to try to push too hard with the original cast.
Right.
This is truly a sequel to First Class.
Oh, it is. Absolutely.
It is not short shifting the new cast at all. It is their story.
Yes.
There is a lot of stuff with Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen, but it's not an overload. It is primarily the First Class cast, and they stepped up to the challenge, and they are phenomenal in this film. It's only 2 hours and 10 minutes total, start to finish. It's not a long sit. You won't have a backache when you get out of the seat, and it just flies. So I can say that everything that I was worried about was completely negated. It worked great, and I'm going to assume that most of the people that are going to be watching this or listening to this have seen the movie or know enough about the movie to not be running around yelling spoiler, spoiler, spoiler. But I'm not the same token. I'm not just going to be blurting stuff out.
Right.
But I will say that all of the problems with X3 are addressed, rectified, and moving forward, we can all pretend that movie never happened.
Correct.
And because I think that's what Bryan Singer is doing. He's pretending that movie never happened. So if you do see the film, stay until the very end of the credits. There's no scene in the middle of the credits, how Marvel normally does it. It's all the way to the end of the credits. There is a scene that sets up X-Men Apocalypse, which is
Right.
coming, I think, in 2016.
Right.
So
It shows a young Apocalypse.
right, yeah, the last scene shows a young Apocalypse, however 5,000 years ago or whatever. But it's a brief scene, and it's probably confusing to people who have no idea what it is. But going in, just know that you have to stay to the end of the credits, and you're going to annoy all the ushers who are trying to clean the theater. I see hands raised in the background.
Yes.
But stay to the end, watch that scene, and it'll set the table for X-Men Apocalypse.
Absolutely.
So I would say, I don't know how, we haven't decided how we're doing, or if we're doing 5 stars, thumbs up, or whatever. But I would say for me, thumbs up, 5 stars across the board. It was a great film.
Yeah. I completely agree. 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10.
5 out of 5.
5 out of 5, 10 out of 10.
Fantastic film.
10 out of 5, 5 out of 10, however you want to look at it. X-Men, Days of Future Past, in the theater now. My web shooters aren't working. You can't swing everywhere, Spidey. Come on down to Scott Clark Toyota. They got FRSs in stock. Even heroes got a ride.
All right, so now we're going to talk about Godzilla. And what are your thoughts on the new 2014 Godzilla?
Godzilla, wow. That was, I thought it was phenomenal. I know this is, we're going to start sounding, people are watching us thinking, oh boy, they just love everything.
Right.
That's not true. However, this week, this episode, we tend to like the movies that we're looking at.
Right.
Godzilla was phenomenal. I went to the 1998 Roland Emmerich film, and when I watched it, it had been, movies like Pacific Rim and stuff like that didn't exist yet.
Oh.
So it was like, I was so jazzed for a big movie like that, that when Godzilla in 98 came out, I brainwashed myself into liking it.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, it's great, it's great, it's great. And even people around me, my best friend was like, man, I don't think so. I think you need to reevaluate this.
Yeah.
And this movie, Godzilla, by Gareth Edwards, the director of Monsters, his only previous film was Monsters, then he made this.
Huh.
He knocked it out of the park. I mean, this movie is amazing.
It's fantastic.
It is phenomenal. Godzilla is, the movie is, it's a weird word to use, but it's a ruthless movie. It doesn't give you a break. It doesn't give you, there's not a lot of, or any really tongue-in-cheek moments. There is humor in the film, but it's all situational humor. It comes from just absurdities that are happening while the movie's happening.
Definitely.
But there's no crazy, goofy comic relief characters.
No.
Everybody's dead serious in this movie. And that's not bad. That usually sometimes that can mean it's boring, but it's not. It's a somewhat quote unquote realistic version of how people would react.
Oh, definitely.
When Godzilla, there are 3 monsters in the movie, Godzilla and his 2 Mutos. They don't give a name other than that. It's Mutos or Mutos?
I think it's Muto? I don't know.
Yeah,
I've only seen
it's on the
once,
screen,
so.
but yeah.
Right.
But anyway, they are wrecking havoc, and people are running scared, obviously. The one thing I did enjoy about the film that was kind of an interesting twist for me was it wasn't all destruction.
Right. It wasn't.
I mean, it wasn't
Man of Steel.
Right, it wasn't Man of Steel where the last 20 minutes are the destruction of the city.
Right.
A lot of, they're in the desert, outside of Las Vegas and stuff. So it's a lot of that's an interesting aside to put there, but it's very it's a very intense film. It's a very fun film. It's
Yes.
excuse me. It's enjoyable. It's a ride in the old traditional sense of the
Definitely.
word. It's a roller coaster ride.
Absolutely roller coaster.
People may be a little misled with the trailers, and they're going to think Bryan Cranston is the star
Right.
of this movie. He is not. He has a
not.
significant part, but he is not the star. As we alluded to earlier, Aaron Taylor Johnson is the star of this
And
movie.
he does a phenomenal job.
He really does.
I was really surprised.
Kick-Ass, that character is way behind him. David Strathairn, I think that's Strathairn. He plays the Admiral on the show.
Okay, yeah.
And in a lot of these kind of movies, the Admiral, the military would be kind of the bad guys. Like, they would be always trying to, they would just be kill, kill, kill.
Right.
He doesn't do that. He's a very human character. He's
Definitely.
very open to suggestions. He's very, he's very caring
Right.
to the people around him. He's not ruthless in any respect.
Right.
It's just, I don't know. It's just all of the beats are correct
Right.
to me. It feels it is a well-written film.
Definitely.
It started with a really good script, and I don't know who wrote this film. I did not do my homework. I apologize for that. But Gareth Edwards, I know, probably did a pass on the script anyway as the director. But the effects are amazing. The fight at the end, and yes, the other complaint is there's not enough Godzilla in the Godzilla movie.
That's my big complaint with the movie.
Well, yeah.
We'll get to that in a minute.
It's true. But going back to the original 1954 Godzilla, because as everyone knows, there was two versions of Godzilla. Well, not two versions, but there was two cuts of Godzilla.
Right.
There was in 1954. There was that version that was made in Japan for the Japanese audience, and it was like 98 minutes or 99 minutes. It was long anyway, and it was a lot darker. It was very dark, a lot more intense.
Yes.
The allegories with the nuclear. Hiroshima was right in your face.
Definitely.
Obviously, it hadn't been, but 10 years after it happened.
Right, because Godzilla's ultimately a metaphor for that.
Exactly, he's a metaphor for the nuclear bomb. So it was a lot darker. In 1956, there was an American cut of the film,
Right.
which is what most people know, because that's what we grew up watching on TV.
Right.
It was Godzilla, King of the Monsters, and they inserted Raymond Burr. He shot for several days, and once you watch the movie knowing that, it's a different experience because you realize that he never has any direct action with anybody. Like, it's always the back of someone's head and him talking. But then when they do the reverse angle and you see the person he's talking to, sometimes they don't have the same clothes on. Sometimes they have a hat on when they're the back end don't have a hat. It's just weird. It's fine. It works remarkably well, especially for the time. I mean, it was and it was like 80 minutes. It was a real short version of the film. But both versions are really good. They are the template for the monster movies that you think of when you think of monster movies in the 50s.
Yeah.
It was a great movie. But anyway, my point is that movie, it does withhold Godzilla a lot. You see him bits and pieces. You hear about him. So I think maybe Gareth Edwards was paying tribute to that a little bit. And also, if Godzilla just comes out full on and does battle, you have nowhere to go from there.
You've got nowhere to go. You're peaking at the beginning, and then it's just downhill from there.
Right. And then you have the again, the Man of Steel metaphor, which I still love Man of Steel. Don't get me wrong when I say this. But there's that almost a pummeling effect where you're just exhausted by the end of the movie. Godzilla doesn't do that. It really withholds the main one-on-one battle for the end.
Definitely.
In San Francisco, which is a nice nod to, they knew he was coming. They had time to evacuate the city.
Right.
So it's not like there's thousands of people dying in this attack. So
right. It's not like he just came out of the ocean and just started blowing everybody
people
up. Right.
The city is virtually empty by the time they get there. So
Absolutely.
As an audience, you can sit there and kind of really enjoy it without thinking, oh man, look at all the people he's stepping on right now.
Right.
There's not that. So that
Godzilla's the good guy. He just killed 18,000 people.
18,000 people, right? Which again was the big complaint with Man of Steel.
Right.
Was the wanton destruction of the city and everybody in it.
Metropolis was leveled.
Exactly, pretty much, yeah. So anyway, that final battle is just one for the books.
Oh, It was absolutely.
It brings back so
it
many
was awesome.
giddy memories of being a kid on Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon watching the monster features on TV. It was just, and what's great, and I don't know how he did it. I'm so glad he did, because like Roland Emmerich in the '98 version, they really put Godzilla as a lizard almost.
Yes.
You know? And this movie, it's Godzilla.
Right.
It's the old Godzilla that we know. It's tweaked a little bit, the design and his face and everything, but it really is the giant Godzilla.
Right.
With the little arms and everything. And the stuff, the scales on the back, not scales,
The spines.
The spines on the back, spikes on the back. And even though it's a digital Godzilla, for the most part, I believe it's obviously state-of-the-art effects.
Right.
It still does this amazing trick of almost bringing to mind the man in the suit. You know, the actual actor stepping on stuff. For moments here, the way he moves and stuff, you know, and he jumps a little bit, it does bring back to mind that old man in the suit kind of Godzilla. It's not goofy like that,
right?
Obviously.
It's not goofy.
It's state of the art, and it does. It just brings that to mind. It does. It doesn't take you out of the movie like, what is this? If you're looking for just, you know, band slam, wall to wall action, monster on monster, rent Pacific Rim.
Right.
That's the movie that is.
Right.
Godzilla is more of the traditional monster movie.
Definitely.
Where you're building towards a showdown at the end. And the human characters are passable. Aaron Taylor Johnson is really good.
Right.
Bryan Cranston is really good. Elizabeth Olsen. If you can, at all possible, see this in IMAX or RPX, the largest screen with the best sound, because that Godzilla roar rattles the walls.
It makes the theater shake.
Yes.
Literally.
It makes the theater shake. And it's phenomenal. So again, 5 stars out of 5. Go see it.
Oh, yeah.
Your thoughts?
I'm going to give this one a 9 out of 10.
Okay.
Just because Pacific Rim is my movie. You know?
Well, yeah.
That's, wall to wall, like you said, just action from the get-go.
Yeah.
And I was kind of expecting Godzilla to be that way because I'd never seen a Godzilla film before.
Right.
But
well, that's fair. I mean, you know, that's a fair complaint.
Right.
And that's one that's a lot of people have made.
Right. I loved Godzilla. I love Bryan Cranston and I love Aaron Taylor Johnson as well. And I feel like both of them did a fantastic job.
Agreed.
And my biggest complaint is that I just wish that there was more Godzilla in it.
Yeah.
That was my biggest complaint. But you know, great movie.
But when he is on screen, no complaints.
No complaints at all. One of my favorite parts of the movie is when they're just following him. They're not even driving him because you can't drive a.
You mean in the ocean?
Right, in the ocean. Where he's going to one place and he's literally like an alligator in the water.
Yeah.
You just see his back spines and then his tail in the water.
And I love the Navy ships around him.
And the Navy ships are just around him and he's just slowly moving in the water. And I think that was the best atmospheric part of the movie.
Yes.
Just waiting.
Yeah.
Waiting to see what he's going to do next. Because that's what everybody in the movie or everyone who was a part of the action in the film was waiting.
Yeah.
What's he going to do next?
Right.
We know he's going there, but what is he going to do when he gets there? And that was probably my favorite part of the movie was just the build up. Like you said, it didn't peak from the beginning and go down.
Right.
It started from the bottom and just went all the way up, and it
kept
awesome.
building. Yeah, and that's the thing. I didn't say this, and you didn't either. It's not really a spoiler. Godzilla's the good guy,
right,
in this movie.
Absolutely.
You know, he is the hero, and that is just awesome because, like the scene you're talking about when he's in the water.
Yeah.
The Navy is not hunting him.
Nope.
They're following along with him, because they know that he's going after the creatures that are wreaking havoc. and he rises from the depths. Basically, they fed on radiation.
The nuclear radiation.
The nuclear radiation. And they, a billion years ago, or hundreds of million years ago, when the planet was full of radiation, they basically owned the world. When the radiation went away, they went underground. That's the synopsis of the film. That's the setup of the movie. So now that they've come back to the surface, it's like Godzilla is the sheriff,
right? And
he's come up to stop them from wrecking the planet, and that's just great. I think so for kids. I think for kids, younger kids, this will be a great movie.
Definitely,
because he's the monster that they can be a fan of.
They can rely on.
They can rely exactly. They can rely on. He's like the big protector.
He's the good guy.
Yeah. And we was joking yesterday, me and you, about making him an honorary Avenger. Like he should.
Yes.
He should have the little suit of the way, a little leather jacket. But yeah, it's really good, and it is fair. It is. There could be more Godzilla. I think that over time that may hurt the film on repeated viewings, maybe.
Right.
Down the line,
that's on third or fourth viewing. Though.
Right.
That's not second or.
Yeah. When you're on Blu-ray, at home, you're just going to jump to the last 30 minutes and watch that.
That's what I'm going to do.
And when there's a sequel to it, which I'm pretty sure there will be a sequel.
They've already stated that
it, right?
It's going to be one, or there will be a sequel.
Then now there won't be. They won't have to hide him. Like they've used that card now. They've used that build-up card. So in the next one, I'm sure there'll be more Godzilla fighting in the next one.
Oh, absolutely.
So so we love that movie, and go see it. Like I said, you go see it on the biggest screen you can, but definitely go see it in the theater. All right. Well, it's almost time to start wrapping up on our premiere episode. So first, we'll take a look at what's coming up this weekend at a theater near you. We have Seth MacFarlane's second feature film, A Million Ways to Die in the West.
Yeah.
With Seth MacFarlane, Charlize Theron,
Neil Patrick
Harris, and a whole lot of people. I'm not going to bore you by listing them here. It is a hard R-rated film.
Yes.
Bear that in mind before you bring the children. And it is basically about a very cowardly young man who is Seth MacFarlane, who is somehow or another gets in the crosshairs of a gunslinger, Liam Neeson, and he's got to try to figure out how to survive. But it looks very good. I mean, it looks hysterical from just the previews I've seen. I don't know the feature or the finished product, how it's going to be, but that's coming up this weekend. And what else have we got?
We've got Maleficent, which is Angelina Jolie's new film. And for those of you who don't know who Maleficent is, which I'm sure all of you do, she is the I don't know if she's a witch or a queen or what, but she was
like a witch. I guess I always thought
something
her was
like
a
that.
witch, right?
She's a fairy.
Fairy.
That's right. She's a dark fairy. But she was the antagonist in Walt Disney's Sleeping Beauty. So it's going to be focusing on her as, I even believe, as a child growing up in the kingdom.
Just like the untold story.
Right, it's the untold story of Maleficent. And there's a book out and all that stuff, but the book is based on the screenplay.
Okay.
So,
and Elle Fanning. Elle Fanning is Sleeping Beauty.
She's Aurora.
Aurora, okay.
And
I never knew her name.
Yeah, Aurora.
Okay.
And it's going to be focusing on their interaction. So Aurora as a child and Maleficent as an adult. And it's interesting because it looks like Aurora's father is almost the bad guy.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting from the trailer.
Right, because he's in armor that gets caught on fire, and Maleficent mentions the fact that she had wings once, but they were taken from her by the king.
Yeah, the illusion there is that he took them.
Right.
Or cut them off or something.
Right, that's the idea. And but it looks fantastic. Angelina Jolie, I haven't seen anything that she's in that I haven't liked.
Right, yeah.
So she's a phenomenal actress. And
it's going to be an IMAX 3D
yes,
as well.
Yes, it is.
So
IMAX 3D.
Yeah.
It's kicking Godzilla out.
It is actually taking Godzilla out.
But definitely check that one out. May 30th as well. Comes out Friday.
And it is PG.
PG.
So
good one for the kids.
good one for the kids. Yeah. There is, I guess, some concern that not concern, but there is. It looks kind of frightening for little kids.
It does. It does look very frightening.
I know the big story when they were making the film. I guess I thought of her as Sleeping Beauty. I didn't know her name. Aurora as a little girl.
Right.
Their interaction says when she was a small child, they could not get any children to go near Angelina Jolie, like in her gear. So
Wow.
they actually, she had to have her daughter, her own daughter,
Really?
her and Brad Pitt's child, play Aurora as a little girl because
Wow.
she's the only one that
Near
wasn't
her.
afraid of her during the film.
Well,
so yeah,
She looks pretty freaky.
right. Those horns, and that answers the
horns.
question. I always wondered this, and I asked people who were real Disney fanatics, and they didn't know the answer. I asked, because I remember the Sleeping Beauty, the cartoon.
Right.
Were those horns, or was that a hat? And apparently they are horns.
They're
right?
horns.
Yeah. And she has a hat over them.
She has a covering
Yeah.
over her horns.
Yeah.
And in the film, she actually takes the cover off, and you can in the trailer they're
Nice.
I think they're they're like a oak color,
Oh,
so like
okay,
really
cool.
dark brown. But
Yeah.
I believe she's wearing face prosthetics as
Okay.
well to accentuate her cheekbones.
Yeah.
So she looks kind of freaky.
Yeah.
And
Angelina Jolie looks like an alien anyway.
she
And
does,
not in a bad way.
But right. In the trailer, the thing that the part that hooked me, and it wasn't even the dragon. That the dragon thing is going to be awesome. But it's when she was standing over Aurora's cradle in the throne room, and she says she's going to bestow a gift on the child, and she giggles, and then she just full on laughs, and it's got terror in it.
Yeah.
So
bear that in mind. If you do have small children, you might want to watch this one first.
right.
And just see, because you know your own kids what their tolerance levels is, but it is pushing the PG level right to the max.
Definitely.
So, but it does look like it's a lot of fun, and
Yes.
it's in 3D as well as regular 2D and in IMAX 3D.
Definitely.
So check those out. That and Million Ways to Die in the West are the two movies that are coming out this week, and of course X-Men: Days of Future Past and Godzilla are still in theaters,
Definitely.
as well as lots of other movies that we don't have time to mention here. But this is the end of our debut episode. I've had a great time, Mr. Mackey.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I've had a wonderful time.
And we'd like to thank Todd for making it all happen. And we also like to give out a special thanks to Scott Clark Toyota. Come on out to Scott Clark Toyota. They're located at 13,000 East Independence Boulevard in Matthews, right off of 485. So come down here for all your needs, okay?
Give them a call at 704-535-1972 and check them out on their website at www.scottclarktoyota.com.